how often do you check your office emails outside of work hours? I'm guilty of that spool. When I'm off Saturday, Sunday, whenever, I just think I'll check social media and then I'll go through my emails just very quickly. But it's never quickly, is it? You always engage when you're not necessarily being paid for it. And the trade union Prospect wants the government to give employees a legally binding right to disconnect, meaning your boss is banned from routinely emailing or calling outside set working hours. Alan Price is the CEO at BrightHR, which is an HR software and employment law advice firm. How are you doing? You okay?
I'm really good, thanks, Nina.
So what strikes me on this is it's one thing telling yourself I'm not going to check at the weekend. It's quite another thing. Basically, we have to police ourselves on this. So how would it work legally to protect workers and also in terms technically?
I think, first of all, you've got to think, where is this coming from? A lot of employees are now working at home, so the line of blaring between home and office has obviously got more challenging. In the past, we're checking email, as you said, of a weekend, of an evening, but where you've got your laptop in front of you, there's no easy way to clock out at home, and therefore a lot of employees, and obviously trade unions, are looking at that right to disconnect. But if we look further afield, Ireland brought in a code of practice in April. France have had this law in place for 3 years now for larger employers, and you still don't see that disconnection. Any policy is going to be hard to put into place, especially when, for example, I want to speak to my manager about being off sick tomorrow or booking a holiday, but the right to disconnect legislation would mean I can't speak to them. So in practical terms, it's a great idea, but it's down to sort of common good practice.
And what about the people who might say, I don't want to disconnect. I enjoy working around the clock. I want to get one step ahead of my colleagues. My elbows are sharpened. There are people like that, and they think it's their right to go the extra mile.
Well, we give HR advice to thousands of small businesses, and we were speaking to one just literally the other day who said, I've got an employee who likes to come in an hour early, clear their inbox, and they're a graphic designer and they want to focus on what they believe is art. So they spend the day doing that and they get to their emails at the end of the day. They don't want them to do that because they're not paying them. And as you said, they see that as a way of controlling the day. They enjoy the job and therefore they don't necessarily want a policy which prevents them from connecting early. And a lot of employers have seen this press and have seen this in the EU coming in potentially as legislation, and they're trying to find a practical way both to support the employee and themselves, but more importantly, those employees who see their emails a little bit like social media and they want to go in and see what's going on and get some heads up on what's going to happen in the next day.
I think what you realise when you do lean out slightly and you don't look at your emails as often and you don't necessarily reply is that actually it's not particularly efficient, is it, to always be checking your emails? If you give that part of your brain a decent rest, you power down from work and then you go in 2-3 days later, you are going to be better at your job.
Well, we look after 30,000 employers, and I can't think in the 20 years I've been in HR where I've heard of an employer saying, please be available all the time. Have access to your emails because it's going to make you more productive. And there's never been an argument that the more hours you do, the quality increases. And we already have health and safety rules about not working more than 48 hours a week, getting adequate rest breaks. So it's very much down to that employment relationship when you start your new employer or you go back to the normal office, that you have a conversation about what's expected. But again, it's common sense trying to have a policy. Ireland's got a code of practice. They didn't bring any legislation in. They just brought in a code of practice, and that was just giving practical steps for employers and employees of how to deal with it.
And Tony and I were talking about earlier, is there a shift in demographic? Are younger people now less inclined to send those emails on a Sunday? Are they more likely to think, do you know what, you pay me from 9 o'clock on a Monday and that's when I will engage with you from?
I think there's two different ways of looking at this. The younger workforce are more digitally able, so they do have access to their mobile device or their laptop or their iPad. But then in the same breath, they're also much more aware of personal time. And I've seen over the last 12 to 18 months with the younger workforce that there is that distinction. And I think working from home, that's become more important now because you need a clear cutoff. And if you're working on your kitchen table, it's not as easy as leaving the workplace where you've got that clear distinction between I'm home now and I'm switching off.
Really interesting, isn't it? And we all have to take responsibility for it. I've started signing off my emails with an automatic signature that says, I might email you at unusual times because my working day starts at 4 a.m. Please don't feel obliged to do the same. And it's small steps like that where we pull back a bit. So it's not quite as normalised to be available all the time. So it has such an impact on family life. Oh, go on.
I'm still judging you for doing that.
Why?
Because just why send them? Because straight away you trigger people. You saying don't feel like you need to respond, but if I want to get in your good books, I'm going to respond.
Yeah, but then I have to work their working hours, which would bring me out of my family time and my relaxation time.
Can't you set a thing so that send email at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning?
Potentially, yeah. Potentially, yeah. That's
but Tony, why are you checking your emails?
What's that? Sorry,
Tony should be checking his emails. He wouldn't know you're emailing and maybe switched off.
Yeah, no,
That's true.
I do. Do you know, I look first thing in the morning when I wake up just to see if there's a government press conference so I know whether I've got an hour of the show off.
Oh, doesn't that say it all?
That says it all. Hey ho.
85058. Be really interesting to learn how you're coping with compartmentalising work, especially when we've been working from home so often. Thank you so much,
Cheers, Alan.
You're welcome.
Just while we're on that subject, I'd like to know.